My loves, it is time for a long overdue Ask Me Anything Q&A type video. So good afternoon, welcome to Maverick Baking. If you're new here, I admire the nosiness just straight off the bat. My name is Kelly and we are here today to talk about just about everything. I sent you guys the request to ask me just about anything on Instagram and on YouTube because it's been a while. It's been like a year, probably like 2 years since we did one of these. It just felt like something to do. And plus, I'm still in the process of stocking my kitchen with the necessary things to make new recipes for you guys, so eccoci qua. So as I've done in the past, I'm going to be splitting today's video up into 3 separate parts. A big chunk on kind of questions on life in general, like the ones you're about to see. Then there'll be a chunk in the middle with everything to do with food for those more interested in that and less interested in me. Correctly so, and a little chunk at the end answering questions about all things Italy for those who are here for that kind of content. They will all be I'll timestamp them here or here somewhere, and there should also be like a skip along thing if you're interested or uninterested in other parts. I'm not going to be offended. Thank you so much for all of the questions you sent in. I'm going to be answering as many as possible without making this a bumper podcast episode. And let's get into it. One of the first questions I received, which I was actually very grateful for, is, how are you doing? I am good. September 2024 was probably, if not one of the most challenging months of my entire existence on this planet, which I did not expect it to be, but it was. Lots of new things, some lovely things, some absolutely tragic and horrible things. But October so far has been good. And the end of the month was a little bit easier. Things became easier to digest. Moving on, I'm doing good. Thank you for asking. Someone asked, what do you do for a living? So this is a good question because it's something that I don't really share kind of too often, I guess, publicly for obvious reasons. At the moment, though soon to be changing, I work in a gelateria. I sell gelato to the lovely public and tourists of Central Venice, and yeah, that's what I do. Someone then asked, what is your dream job? And of course I'll insert here that, does a dream job really exist? I don't know. The dream job is, at the moment, pastry chef, whether self-employed or otherwise, because the idea of making cakes for a living just makes my little girl brain happy. The idea of being in a kitchen, though it's still tough work, it's still hard work, it makes me much, much happier. And I'm soon to be moving to a job that contains a part of that, which my current doesn't, so I'm pretty happy with that. Someone asked, what is your workout routine? Now, I have to be completely transparent here and say that I don't have one because I don't really work out. When I had periods of my life when I did, I used to enjoy strength training at the gym. When I worked in an office, I enjoy dancing a lot, whether it's classes or just, YouTube things, recreationally, whatever. And I'm also a big walker. I can drive, but I don't. So at the moment, my workout routine is my job and my commute. My commute alone involves, throughout the whole day, probably about 45 minutes of walking, always at a fast pace because I'm usually almost late for everything. And alongside that, I'm working 5 to 7 hour shifts on my feet, using my hands, lifting heavy things. I'm physically okay without having a workout routine and have been for the past 1.5 years of working there. Someone asked, what is your hair routine? And I wish I had a better answer for this. This is the product of genetics and laziness for the most part. So I should disclose, as is probably obvious, I cut my own hair maybe once every kind of 10 to 12 weeks. Double shampoo and condition maybe once every 3 to 4 days, depending on the season. And that's it. I don't use any product. I don't use any heat. It air dries, whether that's good for it or not. This is day 4, having brushed it yesterday and leaving it in a bun for a few hours. Routine. Someone asked, where are you from? I am from Aberdeen in the northeast of Scotland. Someone asked, what languages do you speak? At the moment, obviously, I am a mother tongue English speaker. I also understand Scots and a couple of dialects of Scots, if you want to include that. I speak Italian. Without having ever done a kind of formal exam, I would guess probably around B1, B2, definitely to a fluent level because I use it every single day, but I still make very hilarious mistakes every now and again. I'd say I'm probably around an A1 level of Spanish, and it's something that I am actively trying to learn as a hobby. Someone asked, what are your beauty must-haves? Now, this I don't really have a solid answer for because I change all the time. I like novelty. I like buying new stuff. I've been a big fan of products from an Italian brand called Espresso in terms of makeup. I'm also a big fan of a lot of things from Kiko in terms of, you know, low budget stuff. Their lip balm, for example, I actually have it with me. It's the one I have on just now. It's a sort of tinted lip balm. I've been using that for years and I've yet to find one that I like as much. In terms of skincare, I'm a big fan of a lot of products from The Ordinary, from the Inkey List, and from also Paula's Choice. At the moment for skincare, I'm single cleansing with CeraVe. I'm not sure how you say it. I am moisturizing with The Ordinary's just basic bitch moisturizer. If I do exfoliate, I'm using the Paula's Choice gel with salicylic acid. In terms of eye cream, I'm using an Inkey List caffeine eye cream. Otherwise, very little. Lazy, just like the hair at the moment. Someone asked, what are you most proud of being non-work related? And I would probably say my approach to food nowadays is something I'm super proud of. Having gone from such a tragic relationship with food when I was a child to a tumultuous one as a teenager for a very long time, you know, over 15 years altogether of eating disorders of various kinds. No one else really pulled me out of it despite trying many times, and you know, it's something I managed to do on my own, and it's something that a lot of people don't even get the chance to do. So I'm very grateful for that and also very proud of it. Fantastic question came up after this, which is, what is a life lesson you have not learned yet or you know but are struggling to learn? Money was the first thing that came to mind because I've always been able to save, but never as much as I would like to. But I think the main thing is to stop comparing myself, to stop comparing my, you know, place in the career I've really yet to start, to stop comparing my relationships, to stop comparing my money, to stop comparing my body, everything. And I think that's something that a lot of us take a long time to learn. And it's something I know is a thing that everyone should do, but I still have to really actively remind myself to do so. Someone asked if I have a favorite tattoo, and I think very simply, though I love them all and don't regret any of them, surprisingly, it has to be my little Aperol Spritz that I got as a kind of memento after my first year here in Veneto in Italy, and it's probably the one I received the most compliments on. I think it's really cute. The artist did a great job. I like it. Someone asked, are you an introvert or an extrovert? And as much as I can have my extroverted moments, I'm 100% an introvert, 100%. Someone asked, what is your zodiac sign? I am a Sagittarius. I'm a late November Sagittarius. Someone asked, what games have you been playing recently? I'm still taking my way through Tears of the Kingdom, like 2 years after everyone else. I'm refusing to buy the new Zelda until I do finish that one. I've also been playing a lot of Mario Kart recently, since moving with friends, the new one, with all of the tracks unlocked. Someone asked, do you have any phobias? And yes, unfortunately I do. One of the kind of causes of my childhood eating disorders and the cause of me never really enjoying being drunk or hungover, never having tried drugs, not enjoying roller coasters, all link back to my phobia of vomiting, which I believe you call emetophobia. I'm not sure how you pronounce it exactly. I've only ever seen it written down, but it has controlled me for a large part of my life. It sounds a bit silly to those who don't have it or have never kind of experienced it, because of course, puking is grim. It's never fun. No one enjoys it, but it's something that genuinely leads to a truly indescribable anxiety, nervousness, fear, blind fear that makes no sense. It leads me even to sometimes be afraid of others when they have a feeling of nausea. It's bizarre. It's a truly bizarre phobia, but it's one I've always had, though it's a lot calmer now than it used to be, thankfully. On the back of that, someone asked, would you consider yourself fully recovered from your eating disorders? And my answer to that would have to be yes, though I do believe anyone with any kind of true disturbance when it comes to food never really loses it. They just learn to manage it, or at least that's been my experience in life. I still have a little voice in my head that makes comments on the things I eat, how I eat, when I eat, what I eat, about my body, etc., but my healthy brain is much louder and more coherent thankfully. So while I've managed to kind of get myself out of the dark side of things there, I know that that's something that will always kind of exist within me. As horrible as that sounds. Someone asked favourite movie or director. Director, I wouldn't really say I have. Favourite movies are usually things more on the depressing side, such as Trainspotting, The Shining. That's not really a genre, but that's the kind of thing I enjoy. Someone asked, what one thing brings you absolute joy? And I thought about this for a more kind of profound response, but the main one that comes to mind is chocolate. Someone asked, what is your best life advice? Now, my usual advice to people is to never take advice from me. But my best life advice would be to take things far less seriously. Advice to myself, to friends, anyone at any age. 9 times out of 10, your problems aren't that deep. Your relationship isn't the be all and end all of who you are. If you don't have that particular job anymore, it's not the end of the world. Money can be re-earned. Mistakes can be learned from. Never take things too seriously, and it really lightens the weight, I find. Someone asked, am I a cat or a dog person? And though I love dogs, I love all sorts of animals except chimpanzees, I'm definitely more of a cat person. I grew up with cats in the house. All of my friends growing up had cats in the house. Love cats. Someone asked, could you share something about going to law school / that side of your life? I hated it. To be completely sincere, I didn't enjoy studying it. I studied it for 5 years and then worked in it for 2 years. I was good at school, therefore I went into one of the sort of good at school career paths, you know, like lawyer, engineer, doctor, and I never enjoyed it. From studying it to working in it, never liked it. I met some fabulous people. I learned lots of things that have been very, very useful. I get to have, you know, lawyer as part of my personality and title for the rest of my life, but it's something I would only recommend to someone if you were truly interested in it and motivated to do it, because I was not, and it was a long 7 years. But it also pushed me towards my passion, because in any of my free time it meant I was desperate to pursue things I actually enjoyed. So every cloud. Someone then asked, how would you describe your style? And the answer to that, much like the hair and beauty stuff, would be lazy. A little bit masculine, minimalist, comfortable, and often somewhere between like a 16-year-old boy in the mid-90s and someone's dad from the late 70s. And someone then asked very kindly, what are the best things in your life right now? And the answer immediately that comes to mind is my family and my friends, especially considering the month that's just passed and how difficult it's been. I'm so grateful every day of my life for my parents and the relationship I have with them. My friends both here and back home. My health's in good shape. I'm in a new place, which is nice. Been really enjoying peanut butter sandwiches and pasta with chimidy rape recently. On a slightly more frivolous note. And on that note, because clearly I'm getting hungry thinking about it, let's wrap up the questions on life in general and let's talk about food. My loves, let us stop faffing around and let's talk food. So the first question that came in is one that is perfect for the season, potentially a little bit early, but honestly important from October onwards. And that question was Pandoro or panettone? Now, this is the battle of the Italian Christmas sweet bread, if you're not familiar with either. Typically, the biggest noticeable difference is that panettone usually contains fruit and Pandoro is either plain or it contains other kinds of fillings. Though I love both and I will happily accept and devour both, I have a real weakness for the Pandoro with chocolate chips. I have to be honest, so it's Pandoro for me. Someone then asked, with intuitive eating, do you find you generally eat more or eat more often than the people around you? And the answer to that is both yes and no, because the very nature of intuitive eating means that it depends completely on you from one day to another. Now, that does mean that absolutely on certain days I eat more and more regularly than the people I'm around, whether that be at work, whether that be if I'm out for drinks with friends, for example, and someone maybe has something little to eat and I realize that I want something more to eat. I'm hungry. I want more food. I will have more food. Within reason, if the situation allows for that kind of thing to happen. Obviously, if you're at like a wedding and you're eating off of other people's plates, that's not intuitive eating. That's, you know, something you should probably work on. But the whole point of intuitive eating is you do as you really feel. For example, I will not be put off of ordering a certain kind of pizza on a menu that someone else doesn't want just because it sounds heavy. You know, if I want something with 3 kinds of cheese and spicy salami, I'll get it. But equally, if I've already eaten quite a lot that day and my body just isn't really feeling that hungry or in need of much fuel that day, if someone else wants to have something super heavy and indulgent, I'll have the pizza with vegetables, or I'll just have a margarita. Even if people make comments on it, let them do it. Let it wash over you. Doesn't matter. If someone's having salad and you're having a sandwich, fine. If someone doesn't want chips with their burger and you do, fine. If you're having a snack an hour after you had another snack because your first snack didn't satisfy you, even if no one else is, fine. For example, I always am pretty much insatiably hungry the kind of 1 or 2 days just before my period starts, sometimes even the first day of my period. And I then find that for the 2 or 3 days afterwards, no matter what I eat on those days, I'm just not very hungry at all. And that doesn't really change much depending on how much, how much I sleep or how much activity I'm doing physically throughout the day. My hunger levels are almost always like that because of hormones, because of whatever stage in the cycle I'm in. But equally, if I have a day that's quite active, it's naturally I'll feel hungrier, or if it's a day when, like today, I'm just going to be chilling at home, I'm probably not going to eat as much as I would on a working day because my body just doesn't really feel like it needs it. So the answer to the question is no, in that it's not always necessarily me eating more or more often than other people, but I do find myself eating differently to other people around me, if that makes sense. Someone asked, do you like energy drinks? And the answer is no. I can tolerate some of the kind of super fruity, girly monster ones, but Red Bull, etc., I'm just not a fan of the flavor whatsoever. Even the smell brings nausea, to be honest, though I'm a big fan of coffee, if that counts. Someone asked top 5 meals you eat most frequently, and this is going to be so telling of my budget and mostly cooking for myself status. At the moment, most frequently, I would say I'm eating peanut butter jam sandwiches, or like bread with peanut butter and jam. Jam of any kind, though I prefer kind of like dark blueberry or like mixed berry jam because it works so well. I'm also eating a lot of fusilli pasta with tomatoes and friarielli, which is like turnip tops. It's also known as cime di rapa, super popular here in Italy. Not so much in this part of the country, but I'm a big fan. It's tastier than spinach and it's got a really lovely texture. And it's a super cheap, delicious meal to get vegetables into you, to get lots of fiber into you, blah, blah, blah. Otherwise, risotto, it's something I cook a lot. It's something that's good to cook for one or for a group and is endlessly customizable. And there's something very therapeutic about all of that stirring. Another favorite, especially if I'm a little bit pushed for time, but I still want something really satisfying, especially in these colder months, packet ramen. Usually sesame or beef flavored. Never been a huge fan of the chicken or the veg ones. With a fried egg, absolutely covered in sesame seeds or Mexican tajin, like the chili powder with salt and citric acid in there. Addictive. And also some greens on the side, like spinach rocket, whether I have the frozen stuff or whether I have a bag that's already wilted, I'll just shove it in the bowl with it. It's such a good comfort food. And if we also count something that I don't personally cook, but something that I eat pretty frequently just because of where I am, because it's something I love and because my social life usually requires it quite frequently, would be pizza. Whether you're at an event, whether you're grabbing something quick on the way to meet someone, whether you're going out for dinner and you don't want to spend too much, we're in Italy, pizza is cheap and it's delicious and I want and do eat it all the time. Someone asked favorite kind of cake. Very specifically, this will have to go to the chocolate and hazelnut cake that my mum and I make for each other's birthdays every year. I have a very similar recipe on my blog, maverickbaking.com. Otherwise, a recipe that we use frequently is the Hairy Bikers Gianduja cake. It's phenomenal. It's such a fiddly faff of a cake to make, but it is gorgeous. It's both the lightest and heaviest cake in the world, and chocolate and hazelnut is always my favorite sweet combination, so I could eat it every day of the year, no kidding. Someone asked favorite thing to bake. Probably cookies. They're one of my favorite things to eat as well. They're endlessly customizable. It almost always involves chocolate, which is my favorite thing on the planet. And I don't know, they're fun, they're satisfying to make, they make a big quantity, they're easy to take away somewhere else as well, they're easy to store, they last a while. Yeah, everything about cookies. They're my favorite thing to bake, absolutely. Hence why there are a billion cookie recipes, again, on maverickbaking.com. Someone asked favorite pasta shape. There are two big contenders here. One is rigatoni. Anything in terms of fatness, length, anything. Rigatoni to me is the sexiest pasta shape, and it goes perfectly with all of my favorite pasta accompaniments, in my opinion. I just love it. I love how it looks, I love how it feels, I love how easy it is to fork, but it's not the kind I buy the most. So second, probably equal contender, would be fusilli, specifically the Barilla number 98 fusilli, because it goes with everything. Everything. Even if officially, traditionally it doesn't, fusilli goes with everything. Thinner sauces, thicker sauces, whether it's a pasta asciutta, pasta al sugo, pasta al pesto, it goes with everything. And it's also quite a sexy pasta shape, and I enjoy stabbing it. Someone asked favorite pumpkin recipe, and this has to go to a classic pumpkin pie, though I made pumpkin blondies, pumpkin muffins, pumpkin cookies, pumpkin cakes, pumpkin bread, lots of things. Pumpkin bread's a big contender though. Pumpkin pie, like a nice, not overly sweet and well-spiced pumpkin pie is, if we're talking sweet, because if we're talking savory, pumpkin ravioli with like sage and butter, pornographic. Someone asked favorite hangover food, and I'm sorry to disappoint, but to me, hangover food doesn't exist. I am one of those people who can't even hold down water when I'm hungover, like catastrophically hungover. Even if it's just a little bit of like day after, even if it's just a light hangover, I don't want to eat. I want water and coffee and nothing else. I'll maybe handle some crackers, but until late afternoon, the day after, I don't even want to look at food, sadly. Someone asked, how would you help a friend who doesn't have a good relationship with food, who skips meals, etc.? Now, this is an extremely difficult one. I have never been the person who has a relationship of any sort with the eating disorder sufferer. I have always been the sufferer, so I'm not the best person to give advice on this. Let me start off with that. And of course, it completely depends from situation to situation what that relationship with food is and where it comes from, whether it's an eating disorder, whether it's just a fear, whether it's, you know, what, some kind of disturbance, whatever it is. The main thing I would always advise anyone ever, even with people who have a good relationship with food, is to completely separate discussions of body and diet completely. Talking minimally about weight, even if their issue isn't related to weight, talking minimally about weight, talking minimally about diet and nutrition with relation to your looks, because that can really cause long-lasting issues. Talking about it may help. For many people it doesn't help. So the only other thing I would maybe say is to try and set as good an example as you can. You know, the more normally you treat food, and, you know, the less concerned or the less kind of obsessed you are over the thing, it might make it less of a thing for them, but that could change person to person. So I don't really know what advice to give you for the best. It completely depends on the person. This is part of the horror of disordered eating. But I would say completely leave out conversations around food and body image, or food and body generally. Set a good example, and, you know, try to create good, stable, calm, maybe healthy, nice environments where someone can eat without feeling observed or judged. And unsurprisingly, someone asked the million-dollar question of death row meal: starter, main course, dessert, one alcoholic drink and one non-alcoholic drink. Fabulous. So, gonna start off very, very controversially with ordering the non-alcoholic drink as sparkling water. I don't care what anyone says. To me, it's like water upgraded, okay? I love a bit of sparkling water. I always have. And to me, if I'm gonna be eating this many different courses, I don't want something sweet. I don't want a Diet Coke. I don't want a Lilt. I want sparkling water. It's a palate cleanser. It's perfect. The alcoholic drink, on the other hand, will be Prosecco. I'm not fussy which kind, because to me, even if it technically, officially, traditionally doesn't go with everything, it's a wine that I like with just about everything. It goes with sweet, it goes with savory, it goes with meat, it goes with fish, it goes with vegetables. What more do you want? The starter, for me, though this may seem ridiculous, is going to be a cheese board, because to me it's heinous that a cheese board, something as beautiful, indulgent and relaxed as a cheese board, is the dessert or like the finisher to your meal. No, I want a cheese board as the starter. I want 3 kinds of cheese on there, maybe 4. Something stinky and soft like a brie or a camembert, something salty and crunchy like a strong cheddar, maybe something mild like either a Crowdy or like a Stracchino or something like that. And yeah, okay, let's go for a 4th one. Let's go for like let's go for Stilton. And I want to see dried fruits on there. I want to see fresh fruits on there. I want honey. I want chutneys. I want jams. I want like 2 different kinds of crackers. I want bread. I want it all. I want all of that as a starter. Main course is going to be what I eat for lunch on Boxing Day every year. Not the Christmas dinner, because it always comes with like the trauma and the effort that you put into cooking the Christmas dinner. The Boxing Day turkey stuffing roast tatty cranberry sauce cheese gravy sandwich with my granny's lentil soup on the side. Absolutely yes. And the dessert would probably be either apple crumble with custard or that chocolate hazelnut cake I was talking about earlier. Both. A little version of both. And that is all we have for food questions, folks. Thanks so much for sending these in, and let's talk about Italy. Okay, let's tackle some questions about the wonderful, exhilarating, exhausting place that I live in. Let's talk Italia. How old were you when you moved to Italy? I was 25, just a month away from turning 26. And that, I think, was a good age. From the context now of a 28-year-old, it was young enough that I was still able and willing to take such a risk. I was at a good place in my life to take said risk. And equally, it's old enough that you're kind of responsible in taking that risk. You know how big a risk it is, and you know, at least you have an idea of how independent and how responsible you're going to have to be. That makes sense. Someone else asked, what made you move to Venice? Now, specifically when I moved to Italy with my previous partner, we were living kind of more out in the countryside in a fairly small town, which is close to Venice, close to Treviso, also another city here in the northeast. But what made me move specifically to Venice was actually my job that I had in Venice. I work in a gelato shop, soon to be moving on to other things. I work in the center of Venice, doing that, speaking in English, speaking in Italian, speaking in Spanish. So it was perfect for me to meet other people around my age or meet other people with similar interests, to meet fellow immigrants, and to be closer to that job. When I left that town that I was in, I wanted to be closer to Venice, so that's what brought me there. The internationality of it all and work. Is Italy an easy place to move to? And the answer to that is no. Is it a pleasure to be here? Like 90% of the time, absolutely yes. And I adore this country and its people, but easy is not a word I would use when it comes to talking about moving here. Mostly because of the bureaucracy. Things move at a snail's pace all the time for everything. Things are inefficient, even for those who, were born and raised here. This isn't something specific to immigrants, but it's been worth it so far. Similarly, someone asked, what advice would you give to someone who is planning to move to Europe? Big question. And spend some time in Italy, perhaps also living there for a while. Now, Europe, I should probably add here, I don't know what context that's coming from, if it's coming from perhaps an Asian or American or African context, but Europe is not kind of this monolith. Moving to France would be very different to moving to the Netherlands, which is very different to moving to Italy, etc., for climate, food, culture, economy, bureaucracy, etc. So I would probably say, with Italian specific advice, because I've never moved to Scotland, so I don't really know what advice I could give there, but for moving to Italy, the biggest advice I could give you would be patience, with a capital, bold, underlined and italic, probably even a strike through P. Patience. It is an imperfect place, but as I said before, absolutely worth accepting, in my situation so far, at least, those imperfections for the sake of being able to stay here. So I would give you the advice of being as prepared as possible, because no one else will help you with it, being as patient as possible, because no one else can give you said patience, and finding joy in all of the little things that come with being here to make those first two parts worthwhile, if that makes sense. Somebody asked, how did you learn Italian and what was helpful in the process? I am self-taught. For that reason, the grammar is a disaster when I speak a lot of the time. I could not speak very well at all for the first 6 months that I was here. I used Duolingo to learn the basics, before I arrived, to learn, and when I say the basics, I mean the basics. Otherwise, music was very helpful in hearing, words, commonly used phrases, even learning slang. Also, TV and films was very helpful for kind of understanding and hearing the cadence in which people speak, because that's something that reading will never give you, or learning abroad won't really kind of give you either. So that was very helpful. Also for beginning to understand the differences between certain accents and dialects, even if you don't understand them per se. Reading, though that's something I always found more difficult, because the kind of things I wanted to read were usually quite complicated linguistically, if that makes sense. Unless you're ready to read like children's books or specific language learning books, I found reading to be quite frustrating, because the things I wanted to read for enjoyment, I wasn't at that level in terms of the language. So something else that was helpful was just kind of unplugging from myself and listening to everything. If you're in a room where people are speaking a language you don't understand, absorb it. Listen as much as possible. Listen to the pronunciation, to the cadence, to words that you hear more than once, how people respond to things. Doing that will help you understand and, as I say, absorb the language in itself, because reading and self-study will only teach you so much. You have to listen and take in your environment, especially if you're going to be staying in one specific part of the country. I find that helped me learn dialect words that even at the begin with I didn't understand were dialect words, but those I was hearing more than the traditional formal Italian version. Those are all things I would advise. Someone asked, what do you miss about Scotland? And my main answer for this, because it's something I get asked in person a lot as well, is the people. I miss the Scottish sense of humour. I miss Scottish humility. I miss the accents. I miss being able to use words that feel natural to use, because the kind of accent I use when I speak English, both online, at work, and if I ever speak to people whose first language isn't English here, which is most of the time, I have this kind of polished BBC version of my accent. And I'm not really able to use what I would consider my natural voice or my natural accent, because obviously I'm not in the place where that's used or around the people that also use that accent a lot of the time. So that's something I miss a little bit. I miss the tea culture. I love coffee culture, but I do miss the sort of like ongoing thing of a cup of tea. Obviously I can buy tea and a kettle here, but it's more just the whole ritual of cups of tea and things that I would share with people I worked with in the office, or with my mum, or things like that. Someone asked the benefits of living in Italy, because I feel like we started this off in quite a negative sense, so I'm very happy to answer this one. The absolute number one, both for the sake of what I am passionate about, is the food. The food is globally famous and beloved for good reason. Everywhere in this country there are good things to eat at all prices also, and there's a real culture for appreciating and understanding food here as well, which doesn't really exist back home. Another huge benefit is the climate. Of course it comes with its downsides, such as in the summer, mosquitoes, which we don't have in Scotland, and in the specific part of the country I'm in, there's a huge amount of humidity and unclean air, but also it means that 80% of the time we have blue skies, even in the winter. It's warmer, it rains less, there isn't the hideous Scottish wind here. Another benefit is the people. Italian people are also world famous and beloved everywhere for the same reason. All of the positive stereotypes are there for a reason. They're incredibly warm, they're incredibly hospitable, they're incredibly funny, they don't take themselves too seriously, they're passionate. There are so many benefits of being here that it feels, almost wrong to kind of squeeze them into just one question, but there are so many. The language is beautiful, the architecture is beautiful. It's such a small country that has so much difference from 100 kilometers to another. and I've still seen so little of it. And to follow on from that, the final question for today's video will be, do you still see yourself living in Italy in 10 years' time? Now this I don't really have the answer to. I have not thought more than 2 years ahead ever, so that's a character flaw potentially, but I don't know. I kind of feel like it isn't my forever home, though it also isn't somewhere that I'm ready to leave immediately. For that reason, I'll say I don't know. Perhaps 5 years? Yeah, by that time I hope to have moved forward in the career that I'm trying to move into and learned lots of things. But when it comes to, questions of whether I want a family or whether I want to stay for a long time or whether I want to travel the world and see other things, that I don't know. So maybe for 5 years, yes. For 10 years, I have no idea. And that, folks, I'm sure you'll be relieved to hear, is all we have time for today. So thank you so much again for all of your questions. Thank you so much for watching. I enjoy doing these kind of once a year, and I hope I was able to answer as many of your questions as possible. Do let me know if you enjoyed this one. Do give me any kind of follow-up questions if you like in the comments below, and I'll try and get back to as many of you as possible. But I will leave it there. Thanks again so much, and I will see you for the next one.